I don't care if it was, the All Blacks playing in a World Cup final. The Warriors at 6 o'clock is where it's going to be, and most of New Zealand will be watching it.
I feel like that plays into Manly's hands because Manly can, similarly to Brisbane, when it's untidy and a bit unstructured, they have the talent to be able to break you apart, whereas the Warriors play far more pragmatic.
Are we good enough to win the grand final? Because if we can beat Penrith, can you imagine what the Warriors are feeling like going into the next game?
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
DSPN, welcome in. Lachlan Waugh hosting in place of Martin Devlin, who is on holiday again. I swear that this guy's always swanning about on a beach somewhere. No, Marty's enjoying a well-earned break. In his absence, I'll do my best to keep the standards high up. But Tony Kemp is with us in studio to talk NRL. The former Warriors coach, Kiwis representative, played for the Knights, played up in the UK, played for Leeds.
You had to throw that in, eh? You had to throw the Knights one in there.
Yeah,
with the spoon, mate. That's a bit of a turn up. But yeah, mate, played with Newcastle, played in the Super League. Yeah, it was a good time, mate. Enjoyed it.
Now, I look at the Super League, just quickly, I know we're going to talk about the NRL finals that are coming up and obviously the final regular season round and the Warriors lost to Manly and all that. Just quickly on the Super League, I look at it now and I think of it as quite a step below the NRL. Was it that way in the 90s because you played for Leeds, Castleford?
Yeah, look,
a couple of teams
it's
there.
never been consistently good across the teams.
Right.
At the moment, they've got 12 teams. I think they're looking at going to 14. Bradford and London and York are teams that they're bringing in. But just when I was up there this year, looking at the calibre of Super League teams, you've got your normal St Helens, Wiggins at the top. I think Hull are going all right at the moment too. But down the bottom, you've got teams that are really struggling.
Right.
So depth is the problem in that competition, but they'll still turn out a good enough team to play the Aussies and the Ashes this year.
Yeah. Is it a bit like International League where you've got 4 or 5 at the top and then there is a bit of a gap between the rest essentially?
Well, yeah, it's similar to when New Zealand had their domestic competition back here and we used to play the Australians,
Right.
We'd pull together a really good international side to compete against Aussie and England back then, and Super League's pretty much the same now. They just don't have the depth. I think they're lacking a little bit in development. I think that's why the NRL have looked at it, because the NRL, what people don't realise is with the NRL that they need players in their competition. So one of the that's why London has become quite a hot talking point at the moment. One of the things that the NRL need to do is protect their base. And to protect their base, not only do they need to make sure New Zealand are filtering through their development players, but they also are now looking at England thinking, well, shit, if we run out of players, we can then also go to England to bring them down. Because if you look at the English player, back in the old days when there was Schofield, Crooks, Hanley, now you're looking across the board in the NRL competition, there's a sprinkling of English players all through it.
Yeah, there is. Let's focus on the Warriors. That loss to Manly wasn't great. It wasn't a great quality contest. I guess there was some
worst
points
game this
out
year for me. I said that to Marty. We were
as in worst performance by the Warriors?
Oh, it was just the worst game to watch. It was two teams trying to throw a knockout punch, but just kept having air swings.
Which I feel like that plays into Manly's hands because Manly can, similarly to Brisbane, when it's untidy and a bit unstructured, they have the talent to be able to break you apart, whereas the Warriors play far more pragmatic.
Yeah, and I thought Manly took their foot off the pedal. I seriously, Tom Trbojevic there was really frustrating. I thought he just sat around the back. If you watch a lot of the footage of Tom Trbojevic just drifting around, like he hasn't played well all year. He's struggled along. I reckon 2 years ago he's probably the best footballer in the comp. But I watched him in the background drifting around. He wasn't playing like a fullback who has to get across the field and travel a lot of miles to put himself in positions. He was limping around, just wanting to get through the game. And Cherry Evans, he just knew that he had the game covered. And that field goal off his left foot. Again, you don't want the Warriors to lose, but from a fairy tale from Cherry Evans' point of view,
it's nice, isn't it?
It's great theatre, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I don't think at all during the game that Manly were in fear of losing that game. I just thought that the Warriors, losing Rocco early, having Lecker out there, they actually went down that side before Lecker went there and were finding space. I don't know why they went away from that Manly. They would have had more fun.
Yeah.
And when you look at it like that, I was sitting there watching the game thinking, Penrith and Nathan Cleary are going to go, mate, they put Lecker there next to Tanner Boyd. And here's the question that he's going to have to answer for me. Andrew Webster is whether or not he starts with Tanner Boyd or he goes to Tamari Martin, because I think Tamari Martin's a better defender there. So I think there's some decisions that are going to be made this afternoon where you're going to look at that right edge, especially defensively. Dallin is in no man's land defensively.
Yeah.
A lot of that's because he has a little lack of faith on the inside. He's up in no man's land. They're not going to make a decision around a centre. They're going to have to make a decision around a defensive edge.
Yeah.
So their three men is getting stuck all the time. He's getting stuck in real precarious positions. That way that Rocco shot him, then you had to chase back and dislocate his shoulder. But Tanner Boyd for me is not good enough to defend in the finals. And I think if the Warriors, if they take anything out of this game on Friday night against Manly, is they're going to have to fix up that right edge.
Right.
Defensively they're going to have to fix it up.
Yep.
And I've thought about it this week, and I think Tamari Martin's a fair chance of starting this weekend.
Wow. So as we're recording this, the teams haven't been named yet. They're being named later today.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of love for Tamari when Luke Metcalf was injured. There's a lot of debate around how you set up the halves. It's a real balancing act. Do you actually change out everyone? Like you take, obviously, Metcalf's injured, you take him out, you take Chanel out as well. Do you put both Tamari and Tanner in, or Chanel and Tamari? What is it about Tamari, for example? I'm reluctant to blame things on Tanner Boyd and the drop of form on him, for example, because I liked him at the Titans. But obviously something hasn't quite worked there versus when Metcalf was there. So what is it that Tamari Martin, you talk about defensively, even on attack, is he a better option as well than Tanner?
Yeah, look, I think so. I think he's got, when you have a look at the way that they played together, they had a number of games together, Tamari and Chanel in the halves. And arguably went really well. Sean was out for quite a while. They both came in. They ran the team and they did quite a good job together. They both got decent kicking game.
They won 3 in a row last year when Sean was out, didn't they?
I don't... You have that experience of knowledge that you're going, well, yeah, we've had them before and we know what they're doing. But I think the decision this week has to really... Their attack, all right, is struggling. Okay, so they're not setting the world on fire with points on putting points on teams, but their defence is in all sorts.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's really gone downhill.
Yeah, and I think if you want to get into a grind with Penrith, all right, you're going to have to pick some really, really good defensive players because they are going to challenge you. One in the middle of the park, because they're going to get Nathan going on the front foot, and then Nathan is going to pick you apart on those edges, and he's going to continually go to the same spot until you make an error. So with that in mind, if you're defensively picking players that are frail and they aren't going to be in it for the long game, and you're talking about getting into the grind, Tanner Boyd is not your answer. So the only player you can really go to is you've got to go to your experienced player. He's been around, worn the black jersey. I think he's the more senior of the two, and you've got to put him in there. You've got to put him in there. And then you've got to talk about, well, who's the centre? Because the other part of that is then do you move Lecker back to the left edge, and do you pull Capewell back out there onto that right centre?
Well, that's what they've done this year when they've been short-handed. You've got
to strengthen that right edge, mate.
Yeah.
And those are the only two changes that I can see after watching that team with the position players in those positions that can fill those gaps. Is that you put them there because you've got an origin back row that plays in the centres that's defensively very strong.
Yep.
And if you want to get into the grind, what I'm saying is to win this game, you've got to get into the grind. There's no other way about it. You've got to grind it out with Penrith, otherwise they're just going to pull you apart.
Yeah, they've been a resolute team for years. Yep. They've been built on defence.
Yep.
And so it's an arm wrestle.
And with that in mind, if you're going to do that, then you've got to pick your best defensive side.
Yeah.
Because it's a waste of time if you're going to say, we're going to get in the grind and you haven't got your best defensive team out there.
This team, when you look at the drop in form during the end of the season, a run of games that are incredibly winnable. 2 months ago we were talking about how just do what you've done all year, grind out these teams, look after the ball, be defensively sound. You've got Parramatta, you've got St. George, you've got all these Dolphins, all these beatable teams, and yet they haven't even taken care of the business there. So what I'm trying to get at is, if you're a Warriors fan or even just part of the club, what is there to be encouraged about with this home final against the full-time defending premiers?
It's your grand final.
Yeah.
And that's the way that they have to approach it. They've done 27 rounds to get where they are, and tip your hat.
Yeah.
All right. No one would have picked them to be in the 4 for that long. We were all thinking that they might still be there at the end of the year, but they finished up 6. So tip your hat, they got there. So you've fought all year to be in that position, and there you get the premiers at home in your first home game. Like, if I was a player,
you'd relish the challenge,
well,
wouldn't you?
It's your benchmark.
Yeah.
It's your benchmark game. Are we good enough to win the grand final? Because if we can beat Penrith, can you imagine what the Warriors are feeling like going into the next game?
Damn good.
Damn good, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it isn't just about, we're going to go out there, we're going to beat Penrith. Like, you have to beat them.
Yeah.
You have to beat them. So let's have a look at the game. So the game goes their way, and they strangle them defensively, and they win the middle. I think it's pretty tough that if they don't win the middle, they ain't never going to win this game, all right? But let's hypothetically, we're talking here Tuesday morning. They get stuck in, and Fisher Harris and Noah Cordy and the boys and all that, and get stuck into them, and they jam the middle up. Well, like Mitchell Moses, you've got Nathan Cleary that can kick the Shabizas out of the football and still turn the game around positionally and get the kick chase behind it, which they will because their edges are fantastic, and jam up Chanel down the back and make their forwards run all the way back and come back out. That's called the grind. That's what you call the grind. So are you willing to run 60 metres back and then bring the ball back into them when they're jamming you up again? So this is what they're really good at. They're saying, okay, let's go. Let's just jab the shit out of each other and see who's going to break first. And of course, they're the premiers and they've been doing it for the last 4 years in a way that they've won the competition. So it's not just that, you can win the middle. Then you've got to deal with Nathan Cleary kicking the Shabizas out of the ball if you do win that, and then you've got to deal with his kick chase that gets down there better than anyone else, and then you've got to continue to do that over an 80-minute period. That's when you're looking at it from a football perspective, and you ask me, have they got a chance of winning the game? If it goes like that, the answer is no.
Yeah, so you pretty much need Penrith to be a couple of percentages off their best.
You need Nathan Cleary to get injured in the first minute, all right?
Not that we were asking for that,
not
of course.
Not that we're asking for that, but you need a hell of a lot of luck.
Yeah.
You need a hell of a lot of luck. I think the first bit of luck is that we're playing at home. It's going to be sold out. So
and it's going to be bouncing.
You're going to have, you get your referees are going to be a bit, tentative with the whistle, and the Warriors are going to get some calls go their way and some six agains and all that. Then you're going to have to capitalise on that. So you're going to get opportunities. You're going to have to make sure you convert them. You can't have them and not convert them, because they're going to convert opportunities. And then you start to get into the grind. You're making a game out of it, and then she's a toss of the coin. But 80 minutes against the Penrith side that's coming in, they're not limping into the finals. You know what I mean? I think it's when I talked to you about coaches last week about making this about the coaching of the teams that are going to win the competition. I think when you look at it across the board, Ivan's probably at the top at the moment. He's got his team exactly where he needs it on the side of the draw that I think he gets to the final. I think if everything goes his way, he gets to the final.
Well, if Penrith win, or Warriors, but whoever wins, they get the loser of the Dogs and the Storm, and the Storm win some key players.
I think the Storm win. I think the Storm beat the Dogs. They're not scared of Penrith to get the Dogs. You know what I mean? And then they go across the other side, and I think anyone on that other side, like Penrith, are just going, that's the side we want to be on.
And also, you'd be able to talk to this quite well, considering obviously you served as an assistant coach and then got the Warriors head coaching role. If all works out that way for the Panthers, Ivan comes up against two of his former assistants. So he's got Andrew Webster this weekend, and then the following weekend he'll have Cameron Ciraldo. Is there an edge there, knowing that you've essentially taught these guys a lot of what they know?
I think that's both sides of the coin.
Because then the assistants know how Ivan works, 100%, right?
Yeah, they've been through the finals series with him, so they know they know the call sheet. And I thought that, watching Andrew Webster talk to the team after the game. And really good coaches are really good at changing the narrative, like not sticking with the same narrative, like changing the narrative. Hey, boys, wipe that season off. We've got next week. We've fought really well. If we play our game, we can get this, and I thought that was really great tactic from Andrew Webster. Has he seen it before? Of course he has. He's had experience before of how that. I remember Stephen Kearney when we won the 2010 Tri-Nations, taking the team out in the middle of the park after the stadium had emptied, and we were all sitting out there with a beer.
After the final at Suncorp.
Soak it up. Let's all soak it up, have a beer, just what we've been through for the last month, and just a really good touch. And he's seen it before. Of course he has. Bellyache does exactly the same when they win finals. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think it works both ways. And for Ivan to come up, it's the big dog with the two pups. You know what I mean? Like, I've got the thing with Ivan, and I've always said this, he shares a lot. Really good coaches share everything, but they come up with something else. And I think what Ivan did, he beat everyone to the punch when he rested 16 players. So not everyone else is going, well, I'm going to rest 16 players to follow. Because if you look at bellyache, I think he's kicking himself that he played Jahrome Hughes.
Yeah.
So Jahrome Hughes struggling, not ruled out of the finals yet. No one said he's out. Possibly can get back in the final stages of it. Who knows? But if he had his time again, just like he did with Pepinel's when he put him in the middle and he snapped his ankle, he probably wouldn't have made those 2 changes. He would probably left them out and let him come into the finals. You know what I mean? I would have not played Jahrome Hughes. I thought he had rocks in his head putting Jahrome Hughes back. But
well, it was one of those games where, and it played out this way because the Dogs had to win by like 70 or 80 points against Cronulla to overtake.
Rubber.
Yeah, it was.
It was a dead rubber.
And it mattered a lot more to Brisbane, so you knew they were going to bring it physically.
Yeah, and again, it's the same with Serraldo. It was a dead rubber against Cronulla. You know what I mean? So, but it's the we're ready. We're getting. It's the readiness of the finals football. And basically, what you're saying was, well, Melbourne and Canterbury, you're not ready. And guess what? You guys got each other straight away.
Yeah, Serraldo did say post-match after the Cronulla loss that he said, "Yeah, look, he didn't say this word for word. I'm essentially paraphrasing it. We've got an eye on the finals. This was kind of a tough game to get ready for because our minds are elsewhere."
That's rubbish.
You reckon?
It's deflection. Yeah,
okay.
That's simply deflecting the poor form that the Canterbury team are in. I think we talked about Mahoney last week about whether or not he puts him back. He did.
Yeah.
Put him back in a hooker, and he did put him back in there. I thought he was really good out of that dummy half. It's just not Reid Mahoney. You know what I mean? Galvin's struggling there. You move Burton back out to the left centre. You take out that special kicking game that he brings in, which is just another added piece to the Canterbury makeup in the beginning of the year. And all of a sudden, you're looking at this team looks nothing like the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
So they're limping into the finals, and this is where, for me, it's set up for a team like Penrith, is that they've got the teams in the top form that, like Penrith and Sydney City, are the 2 top teams for me.
Yeah,
I think they're playing absolutely good, great football. Brisbane are playing really good football.
Yeah,
and they got a game that they wanted to get into, to have before they went into the finals. Then if you look at Cronulla, they're happy they get Canterbury like the way they did last week. So they're feeling buoyant. But Canterbury, Melbourne, the Warriors, you know what I mean? They're teams that have limped in.
Okay.
So, you really don't want to be limping into this series.
No, you don't. Let's unpack those finals games in a sec. Just one last thing, 2 last things on the Warriors. The defensive resilience, we touched on it before. I think Andrew Webster said something post-match, and maybe this links to what Serraldo said after the Sharks game, where he went on about it's a new comp next week, it's an exciting time. We're not, I think he is worried, obviously, about the form, but he didn't really focus on that. He focused on the fact that we've had a good year, we've gotten into the finals. Here we've got a home final. This is great. This is wonderful. Is it a simple flick of the switch that they can turn everything around, the Warriors? Because attack-wise, similarly to when they got into the finals 2 years ago, they're not exactly the most exciting team. They don't pile points on. They're not a Brisbane. They're not, the Roosters have been able to do that the last few weeks, so they've scored a lot of points. They're a different team where they look after the ball, they defend well, they're smart with their sets and whatnot. Whereas the way they've looked the last few weeks, the defensive resilience obviously has gone down. Is it easier to turn around in 1 week? Because you look at that second.
That's a really tough question, Lockie. I think you did right. You're in a new competition. And everyone knows that it lifts up. It goes to another level. That's what you want. So, I think they'll all buy into that. And it's really whether you stay in that game for the 80 minutes. So the high level game. Can you stay there for 80 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, the team you're coming up with, we know can do that because they've been there for 4 years in a row at 80 minutes. You know what I mean? So, real test of character this weekend around there. Then you look at teams and if they can make that step. Well, if you were saying, you're picking the same team that you played last week and you're putting it up against this Penrith team this week, you'd say no. But that's what I'm saying. Does he make some changes today which is going to actually get him in that grind and make that next step? And I think you've got to make those defensive decisions when you're making your selections this week to say, actually, I need to put you in that centre spot. I need to put you in that halfback spot. I need to cover you on the bench, you know what I mean? And we've relied too much on the young blokes this year. They're not going to get the rub of the green against Penrith because it goes to another level. I'm talking defensively as well. And if they get that part right, then the answer is, I do think they can take it up another notch. But if he goes out there with the same team that he had last week...
Well, he's not exactly a coach that, swings the axe with selections.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't.
We saw this a lot last year.
Yeah, but, sometimes it takes a brave man to make, some courageous decisions. and some selfish decisions, and if I was looking, and if I was, that's what your assistant coaches are for. If it was me sitting there across the room with Andrew Webster and he said, we're going with the same halfback and we're going to put Lecker in the centres, I'll be saying, you've got rocks in your head, mate. And that's what their job is, so hopefully Stace and Mr. Agar are doing that for Webby, I'm pretty sure Webby's already thinking that way anyway. But those edges, mate, you're talking some very good players coming back this weekend out there on that right edge. And very challenging, and you've got a scientist in that number 7 jersey that will dissect anything that's under par. And I think if you go with that same team that went out there last week, they'll be picked apart.
6:05 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. It means that the second half for the Warriors-Panthers game overlaps with the All Blacks Springboks game, which isn't ideal. But
no,
I sort of looked through some articles over the last couple of days before the times were confirmed on Sunday night. I thought I can understand, being as objective as possible, the perspective that the NRL will come from, because if they had given the Warriors the earlier kickoff, so they'd kick off at 5 p.m. and finish at 7, that I'm pretty sure clashes with the Wallabies game. And Channel 9, of course, have the NRL, those 2 games on the Saturday, and then they've got Stan Sport as well, which has the Wallabies. Right, so it's the lesser of about 4 or 5 different evils, and obviously Canberra didn't want to have a 6-day turnaround, so they got the Sunday game. So it's frustrating, it's annoying for obviously New Zealand sports fans who want to watch the Warriors and the All Blacks, and it's annoying for the Warriors from a TV numbers perspective, but I can kind of understand why the NRL have come to this conclusion.
Yeah, and like the All Blacks have been around for a hell of a long time, what I mean? So, their schedules are set in stone. The problem that you have with a competition is that you don't know in round 1 where Canberra are going to sit in round 27, or where the Warriors are going to sit. And like we saw in round 27, we still didn't know the order of the table. Because you've got to think about it. If Cronulla and Brisbane lose, then the Warriors are 4th. You know what I mean? So you're talking the NRL trying to make a decision on a Tuesday. They've got 3 days to try and make all these changes when they've probably been working on scenarios to go, well, we've only had these scenarios since you guys have been in the top 4 or the top 8. And I just think it's, although you can make those, Ricky's obviously said, a 9-day turnaround for Brisbane's a hell of a lot better than what we got. And he's got the Sunday game. So there's nothing wrong there. But, mate, I think it's much of a muchness. I think when you say, we want them to witness both of them, mate, watch the Warriors and turn it off and watch the rest of the All Blacks. The first half of the All Black game is a waste of time anyway. So watch the Warriors game, which is much more fun, and then turn it over and watch the All Blacks hopefully get a win against the South Africans down in Wellington.
Get 2 screens out as well. I'm sure that's doable.
Well, that's, you probably do what I do, mate. As soon as there's a break, just turn it over. Check the score. So, from a broadcast, the broadcast is a nightmare, scheduling and stuff like that. But look, I think in the since post-COVID, one thing I have noticed is that the demographic of the Warriors fan has changed. Okay, so for the first 20 odd years, you had a demographic of fans, very vocal, generally from around the country, that were die-hard rugby league people. I think since COVID and the All Blacks sort of a little bit of a demise, you had a crossover crowd. And all of these rugby union supporters that decided, I'm going to go and get a Warriors jersey. This is where all the jersey guys have come out and said, we're selling these jerseys to all these people with money, because, the old fans really struggle to be purchasing all that sort of, the shoey guy and, the boom for guy with all the gear and stuff like that. It's totally changed. And I'll tell you what they are. They have just become real loyal fans and want to see the Warriors play. So I don't care if it was, the All Blacks playing in a World Cup final. The Warriors at 6 o'clock is where it's going to be, and most of New Zealand will be watching it.
So you reckon more will watch the Warriors than the All Blacks?
100%.
Wow, okay.
100%.
I saw the figures came out, I think, this morning or last night, that 1.3 million watched the All Blacks Springboks last Saturday. Okay.
Yep.
I would have thought that the All Blacks would get more, but never mind.
Let's have a look. Let's have a look at those stats next week. But I think if the game at 7 o'clock it's 10-6 to the Warriors, I think no one's turned the tally off.
No.
You know what I mean? So
I can't imagine. No.
Yeah, I think 6 o'clock at kickoff, everyone's going to be watching the Warriors play. If it's a tight game, they'll turn the back over to the All Blacks once the game's over.
Yeah, or do what I do and just go to the pub and have both screens and just sit back.
Exactly.
There you go. That's easy.
DSPN.